The heroes enter the king's hall, desperate to negotiate for aid in the coming battle against the goblins living in the forest. But the king is not eager to conscript his own people to die in some woodland war that may never reach his lands anyway. So, the king refuses this request. Or, maybe, a good persuasion roll convinces the king. One good roll and the king is now going to conscript thousands of people to go to war? Why had nobody tried that before? And if it was that easy, shouldn't we just always do that? When you reduce complicated internal conflicts into a single die roll, all the tension from dramatic scenes just deflates, right? The next time we want something, Bongo the Bard will play a little tune to give inspiration to Rolo the Rogue, who's going to roll with reliable talent, and it'll be a 23, and hey, rock and roll, we've raised as a roster of righteous, remorseless warriors. Well, Matt Colville's Draw Steel has an answer to that. One that could apply to your next game, for whatever RPG you're running. Welcome to Mystic Arts, where I say something along the lines of, hey everybody, Daði Einar's here, and then I add that I'm a professional writer and director, and I've been DMing for 11 years. Draw Steel has a system called negotiation, which is essentially a non-violent conflict resolution mechanic. Sometimes, two parties, the heroes and an important NPC, find themselves at odds, usually because the players want something the NPC doesn't want to just give them. In screenwriting terms, this is called intention and obstacle. The book describes this by saying, negotiations happen only when an NPC has that internal tension between interest and reluctance. Right? The king could send the army, but they don't want to risk the army. I must do X, but I can't do X. The king, in that example I gave earlier, something directly from the Draw Steel book, has an internal conflict, meaning it's within the king's head. The text reads, if the heroes want the help of the king's army, they need to negotiate. I think another way to put it is to think of conversations as a puzzle. The players are trying to figure out how to understand the king's logic and then appeal to his own logic. They can't convince the king by appealing to their logic, their own personal logic. They have to speak the king's language. The way Draw Steel puts this is kind of brilliant. Negotiation is not a process that changes an NPC's character. Rather, the heroes are trying to make an NPC understand how behaving differently would have been in character. Right, so to win a negotiation, you need to understand the character you're talking to. The king's reasoning for rejection was avoiding to risk his own men to save some distant land. For me, then, the argument that I'd make right off the bat would be, if you don't send an army to stop the goblins now, to fight them on your own terms, you will suffer a worse defeat when they inevitably fight you on their terms. This way, you counter the king's reason for countering your suggestion, like a sparring match. You argue that isolationism won't work, and that alliances are important, and that he and his people will be safer if they help now instead of waiting until this becomes a more tangible problem. If the player's argument had been, but it'll be so cool fighting next to the army, you know? Well, they haven't addressed the king's concerns at all. He doesn't care how cool it is. But all of what I just said included no mechanics. So how does this look with Draw Steel's mechanics? Well, the system has negotiation stats that explicitly itemize what this looks like. Say the king in our running example starts off as neutral to the characters. In D&D, we already have hostile, neutral, and friendly as the 3 attitudes the game offers for social encounters. In Draw Steel, there's 3 more: suspicious, open, and trusting. But let's not get lost in the weeds just yet. Let's say the king is neutral. According to this table on page 287, that means he starts the negotiation with interest 2 and patience 3. What do those stats mean? Well, patience is kind of like a measurement of an NPC's give-a-shitometer. Think of it like negotiation hit points. After 2 failures to convince the king, he gives up, and the negotiation ends. Interest, meanwhile, is the NPC's default answer, as in if patience reached 0 right now all of a sudden, the negotiation ends and our outcome is 2, the interest. Now 2 isn't an outcome, but in this table, 0 is no and something bad happens. The king says no, and you're all going to prison for daring to tell me how to do my king job. 1 is no, the king refuses and dismisses you. 2 is no, but something good happens. Maybe the king says no, but offers you a small bit of help. A single knight from his retinue, for example. 3 is yes, but something bad happens. So the king says they'll get the army, but the army will only act after the party has perished trying. Or maybe the king wants the heroes to pay for equipment, or guarantee their lives against their own. 4 is yes, you get what you want. We're done. Good job. 5 is yes and something good happens. If you win, you all get a castle, and horses, and armor, and magic items. Okay, we pick one. Also, a note here that if your interest reaches 0, it can't be rescued. It ends the negotiation, just like if patience reaches 0. But then how do we make interest go up or down? We make checks. It's a role-playing game. You make an argument and roll the dice. Good results increase interest, bad results lower patience. Especially bad results lower both patience and interest. And you can't increase an NPC's patience by making a good argument. So what does good and bad mean here in terms of argument? Is it just high numbers good? Good number, yeah. No, we have to think about the NPC. The system requires that we imagine them complexly. This is where the main feature of this system comes in. Motivations and pitfalls. Each NPC has at least 2 motivations and somewhere around 2 pitfalls. You can mess with these numbers. Appealing to a motivation without being caught in a lie or mentioning a pitfall makes the die roll easier. If you appeal to an NPC's pitfall, it automatically fails the die roll, and the NPC's interest and patience both go down by 1. And that's kind of the whole system. The book then lists motivations and pitfalls. They are benevolence, discovery, freedom, greed, higher authority, justice, legacy, peace, power, protection, revelry, and vengeance. Each one could serve as one NPC's pitfall, but another NPC's motivation. Depends on the person, right? Some people are motivated by greed, other people are disgusted by it. My kind of people. My only issue so far with the text here is that the scales go from like 0 to 5 instead of 1 to 6. When running this, I'll probably change it to 1 to 6 so I can track it with a pair of D6s in front of me. But if you, like me, tend to play 5th edition D&D and enjoy it, and you probably intend to keep playing it, you might wish that this system existed in 5e. I would love it if 5e had something like this. I think it'd be a useful subsystem that would provide a lot to players. But negotiation isn't in 5e, and it's not like the creative director of MCDM and the creative director of D&D had a love child called Matthew Perkins. Except they did! Matty P is a fellow dungeon tuber who makes amazing videos, and he translated the negotiation rules into 5th edition D&D, and he even made a handy tracker sheet. It's free, and it's explained in this video, which he kicks off with a kickflip. So if this system sounds interesting and you want to use it in 5e, go watch that video now, and check out his sick kickflip. I'm not going to play it here, you have to go watch Matty's video to see it. Of course, the benefit of playing with negotiations in Draw Steel, as opposed to 5e, is that Draw Steel's mechanics, in this hefty book, play with the system a fair bit. I played as a troubadour in a game that Grant from Mossy Antler ran, alongside fellow players Trakiros and Thomas Fitch, and I had an ability on my character sheet that made me better at negotiations. One that let me make one last check if we reduced patience to 0. It was awesome. Grant said that we'd lost a negotiation, and I was able to, in and out of character, say, just one more thing. One more thing. Which was a nice change of pace from D&D, where every feature tends to have useful combat uses, and not a lot else. Which is especially odd since Draw Steel is a crunchy, combat-heavy game. Certainly about more epic heroes battling in fights, more epic than D&D advertises itself to be. Though, reading the player's handbook, it's clear D&D is primarily a system for resolving combat. And I think Draw Steel stuck the landing on a lot of things, and the negotiation system is brilliant, especially for players who want that additional structure. If you haven't checked out this game, you should. This video isn't sponsored. I backed the crowdfunder before I even started uploading on YouTube, and I played it online after being invited, and I had a great time. I get asked all the time in the comments to review this game, and I've been holding off until I've run a session in person, but I've played a few sessions online. I've been flipping through the book for the past few days, and I guess I can do a little micro review of my first impressions. The impeccable flavor, badass art, unique style, and clear-cut premise cuts Draw Steel above dozens of other RPGs right off the bat. It pitches itself as tactical, heroic, cinematic fantasy. Those 4 key words are the core of the premise, and I can tell that's what it's all about. I certainly felt like a pulp cinematic fantasy hero playing the game. My troubadour cut through hordes of goblins while saying witty one-liners and changing the script. It was awesome, and it was all heroic as hell. Spot on. But tactical, I'm not so sure. Our group never managed to think tactically because all of us had abilities so varied so complex and with such long string of riders depending on our current loadout of meta currencies and other situations, die rolls, that we could never fully understand one another's characters enough to actually strategize about them on our turn. And that was only with a party of 3, and all of us were optimizers, and all of us have run RPGs for years and years. We were not new players by any stretch of the imagination. When I think of tactical games, I like being able to understand characters' abilities. Like in XCOM, I know exactly what every loadout does, and that's what allows me to think tactically. I never got there in Draw Steel. Now, we might well have if we'd played more sessions. I won't know until I run more of it, but I suspect we'll get there. I think there's a lot of system mastery to be unlocked by continued playing experience of this dense, complicated, and layered game. And this may seem like a small nitpick, but the layout is also very different from MCDM's previous, gorgeously laid out books, and I think this new one is not as inviting. There is awesome art from Grace Chung, Nick Despain, and Jason Hassenauer, and it tends to be sort of plopped on the page in the middle of like full boxes that rarely, but occasionally bleed out to the edges. Frequently, tons of white space is left on the page, leaving me feeling like something's been cut, or they simply decided to not extend the art or add a quote or otherwise enhance the presentation of the product. And presentation is part of design. Like how awesome these landing pages are for the start of each chapter. They are so sick. And then there are these ancestries, half-page arts, or the classes arts that take out a whole page. They look stunning. But listen, that's just me. There's a crowd that loves this game, and this is their favorite game explicitly because of the mechanics that I don't like. They like that. They like that it's crunchy. They like the meta currencies like hero tokens and class resources. And those people just got their game, and I couldn't be happier for them. You know, if Pathfinder was jokingly referred to by people as the 3rd edition of 3rd edition D&D or 3.75, I think it's very fair to say that Draw Steel is the 2nd edition of 4th edition D&D, which seems like exactly what it was aiming for. Go MCDM. But ultimately, this game isn't for me, and that's okay. It didn't set out to be all things for all people. Neither did Pathfinder! Which brings me back to negotiations. I don't use them. I don't really like systematizing them, or making there be systems for roleplay. It's just not for me. My table and I enjoy the process of playing these kinds of scenes by feeling an ear and intuition. And we like the idea of the puzzle, and we really like the idea of one well thought out point that appeals to an NPC, and it just works like an instant solution. When someone lands that line that immediately puts the whole scene into perspective, our whole entire table goes, ooh. When I first heard about negotiations, and I read the system, I think I internalized it to a degree. I kept it in mind as a way to frame the challenge in my head, but I never used the mechanics. A player might put their foot in their mouth by saying something that the NPC finds off-putting, and in my mind I'll think, I think they just appealed to a pitfall, and the NPC lost some patience. But I don't know the exact number. But then again, I never needed the system. I never felt like it was missing. But that's me. That's my opinion. You might disagree. In the same way that Draw Steel wasn't made for me, neither was negotiation, and I recognize that. Loads of folks, and that might include you, would find negotiation scenes with NPCs a lot easier if they simply used the negotiation rules. So go try it. Maybe it was made for you. Either try it by running Draw Steel. You could pick up the Delian Tomb Beginner Adventure, which does feature negotiations and teaches people how to play. Or you could grab Matty P's 5e conversion of the negotiation system and try it right now in the game you're currently playing. You might discover that you disagree with everything I've said so far, and you might go play a more systemic game. In which case, power to you. I don't know anything anyway. And that's where we'll pick it up next time. Thanks so much for watching this video. This channel is run by me and my girlfriend.
Bolt says howdy.
And if you want to support us directly, consider joining our Patreon. Patrons get access to bonus videos like Game Tales. His first name is Agent. And Daði's Diaries.
Where you can learn about Bolt.
Where a mechanical man is marching towards the town on foot. Where you can learn who this guy is. So if you want to see some campaign diary content from me, then that's where you'll find it, because it'll never get a life of its own on YouTube. And if you're feeling especially generous, you might like the video, comment, share, or subscribe, and hit the bell to be notified when we release new videos. And until next time, keep studying the mystic arts.
You nerds.
Stop insulting the viewers.
Some of them are into that.